or open them up to free them to think other, better, more useful things. On CD 15, we move on to the third suit. This is called the direction suit. In here, you'll discover how to ask certain kinds of questions, which will presuppose certain kinds of answers. You'll be able to pinpoint where you send the mind just by the kind of question that you're asking them. You will be introduced to many different kinds of questions so that you can begin to understand how each question will shape the experience they have differently. There are some questions you will not want to ask people on a regular day-to-day basis. On CD 15, as we discuss these different questions and the directions that they take the mind in, you'll also discover what the most popular question is, the one that everybody asks of each other virtually all the time, and why it's the wrong question to be asking people. As soon as you understand this, your ability to influence people will go through the roof, purely because the questions you're asking now are no longer keeping them stuck in the place that they were in. They're actually helping them to find within themselves those resources they'll need to transform, change their mind, grow, learn, or whatever it is that you need to influence them with. Finally, on CD 16, the final CD in the entire series, we're going to be looking at strategy. Now, to some extent, we're already looking at strategy in the entire tech. This final suit is a little different in that it lists the top strategic maneuvers that you can use as a mind-bending hypnotist in order to shift people's perceptions, in order to shift them in and out of these covert trances very quickly, so that within minutes of talking to someone, you can overcome problems, fears, phobias, anxieties. You can get people unstuck in their thinking, make new decisions, look forward to a brighter future, or let go of something negative in the past. By the end of this CD, the final CD in this audio program, you'll understand the mind-bending language system inside and out. Then it's just a question of practicing the exercises, doing the fun, simple things that we discuss, so that you can internalize all this knowledge and have it ready at your disposal whenever you need it. So, as soon as you're ready, just join me again on the next track, where we'll begin your mind-bending adventures through Wonderland. I'd like to present to you a kind of a crash course in hypnosis, what it is and how to use it. Now, why would I focus on a crash course on regular hypnosis when we're talking about advanced COVID hypnosis, about mind-bending language? Well, the answer is simple. If you have no experience with hypnosis yet, it's important that you understand the fundamentals so that you know how mind-bending language fits into it, and more importantly, how you can use it yourself. Of course, if you're already an old hand in hypnosis and you know your way around hypnotic technique pretty straightforwardly, then this crash course is just a primer to let you understand some of the unique ways of looking at hypnosis that I have, so that when we come onto certain concepts in the mind-bending language system, they fit in neatly and easily. Everything you know about hypnosis will already fit into what we'll be talking about here in some ways. So it's just a way of reorganizing your understandings and the experiences you already have in such a way that will make it even easier for you to pick up the mind-bending language. So, whether you have experience in hypnosis or not, this little crash course is going to be a very useful tool to give you the foundation on which mind-bending language is built. The first thing that we need to know about hypnosis is that it's not an unusual state. In fact, it's absolutely natural. In hypnosis, all that we are doing is we are pausing the normal reality-making machine inside our minds so that a new reality is possible. How do we do this? Well, we'll talk directly to the unconscious mind, which is where reality gets created. What do I mean by this? Well, the way you see the world around you, the tables, the chairs, the people, all the rules of the world. In other words, what do you do when there's a red light at a traffic stop? How do you respond when you see a school bus stopping and flashing its school bus lights? All these things have to be interpreted by your mind in order for you to make sense of the world. That process of interpreting the world around you happens at the unconscious level. And in hypnosis, we get to influence or change the way people interpret the world around them. So they literally see it differently. Colors can become richer or more dull. Feelings become stronger or change entirely. When it comes to running the show, running most of our lives, the unconscious mind is the real powerhouse behind what we do. And it really should be, because it frees your conscious attention up for important tasks like making plans, like enjoying your life, and so on. Now, if we didn't have an unconscious mind, and if we didn't have a process for pausing the way that we normally look or interact with the world so that we can change it, well, then no one would be capable of any change whatsoever. We'd never grow up. We'd never learn anything new, because as soon as we're presented with a new situation, we wouldn't be able to cope. Luckily, our minds are very well designed, and they have built into it a special safety mechanism that allows us to keep growing in a safe and steady manner. That safety mechanism is called trance. And in hypnosis, we develop a special kind of trance so that people can create more rich and rewarding worlds in which to live. Now, if you've made it this far in life, you will have gone through thousands of little trances yourself without even recognizing them. For example, if you drive a car, everyone's had the experience of driving a long distance and kind of losing memory of most of that journey. If you drive a particular journey or route over and over again, many people find that they'll remember getting into the car and they'll remember arriving at home. But most of the journey on the way home seems to disappear. It's so common that this happens that it's even got a term for it. It's called highway hypnosis, and everyone's experienced it. Other examples of where having simple trances really helps us enjoy our lives more are going to the movies or reading a good book. Have you ever gone to a film and been emotionally affected by what you see? Maybe you got excited, maybe you became sad, maybe you really felt for the characters and wanted someone to win or someone else to lose. Well, if you ever get excited or had an emotional experience about what's going on that screen or what's happening inside that book, you must have experienced trance in order to be able to empathize at the level where your emotions get affected. So, hypnosis is a very natural state that we go into and out of every single day as a way of balancing our emotional experience, as a way of making changes in our lives, as a way of learning and growing as human beings. This is a very important thing for us to realize. Why? Well, because the mind-bending language system is designed to trigger that very same pattern so that you can quickly, easily, and efficiently help other people make changes. And by that I mean make changes like making up their minds when they're dithering, or changes like being able to give someone a good piece of advice without the risk that they'll just throw it back in your face, rejecting your idea as though it was worthless, when you know for a fact that it could solve all their problems easily. So, hypnosis is a natural phenomenon. It happens every day. Now, if we were smart, we could spot it happening inside someone else and then just hijack that trance. Or rather, we could just piggyback off the back of it and use it as a wonderful force for good to help people make those changes that we've been talking about. Now, the problem is, sitting around and waiting for a natural trance to occur, well, that can take time sometimes. So if you haven't got time, what we want to do is be able to trigger the conditions that naturally cause that trance to occur. Luckily, there's a simple formula that will let us do this. If you're familiar with the products that we have at Street Hypnosis, then you'll know about the ABS formula already. ABS are basically the 3 conditions you need to satisfy in order for a natural trance to occur. The A stands for absorb attention, the B stands for bypass the critical factor, and the S stands for stimulate the unconscious mind. ABS. Let's look at those 3 things in a little bit more detail so we understand what we mean by them and, very importantly, how to get them. The first step is to get someone's attention. You need to focus people's attention. Attention is like the major force or energy inside the mind. It's what allows us to think, to act, to feel, and so on. Ever notice that after a heavy day at work where you had to do a lot of thinking or maybe a lot of arguing, you feel emotionally drained, you feel physically drained? Now, you could have been sitting on your backside the whole day long, and yet you're still absolutely exhausted. Why is that? Well, all that mental activity sucked up your energy and your resources. That's what attention does. Now, when people get distracted, and this happens in our normal everyday lives, our attention goes here and it goes there and it bounces backwards and forwards. It gets diffused across a whole bunch of different things. That energy is wasted. It's kind of like a garden hose with lots of holes poked into it. There's just no energy in the water that comes out the other end then. However, if you manage to gather all of someone's attention, in other words, you go across the hose, you find where all the leaks are, and you tape them up, it channels all that water, you channel all the attention towards one simple idea. And what happens? Well, in the case of the garden hose, you get a powerful jet of water coming out, one that, under the right circumstances, could even knock a person over. Now, in terms of the mind, what you get is you get a pure stream of attention, which we can use in order to create hypnosis. So, how do we create attention, or how do we lock people's attention? There are many ways to do this. You can tell stories, you can use certain ideas that you know the other person is interested in, and so on. We're not going to be covering all those things here because they don't fit the context that we're here for. We're here to learn about mind-bending language. Now, something you should know is that mind-bending language actually uses a backdoor, a secret switch that's inside the brain. It's hardwired into us. That forces us to pay attention and pay attention in a special way. That secret doorway, or that special switch, is called novelty or surprise. We'll talk more about how that works and what it does to the brain in a later part. For the moment, let's just focus on the simple idea that when you use surprise or novelty, people's attention automatically channels in, lasers in on the idea that's presented to them. Now, to make the effect even more powerful, so that when you use your mind-bending language, it really has the biggest impact it can make with people, there are a couple of things that we can do non-verbally with our behavior, our tonality, and so on, in order to reinforce what we're talking about. It kind of adds an extra double whammy to the surprise or the novelty that we'll be using with the language, and it gives the mind an extra hint that it's time to pay attention. This is very important because if people don't quite hear what you're saying and ignore the language, the words of the mind-bending language, they only kind of listen to them kind of in passing and move on, well, at that point, you still can't get their attention. You need to have enough attention on what you're saying so that this switch that's inside the mind gets thrown and all the rest of the attention goes towards that automatically. So how are we going to achieve this? Well, there are three basic things that you can do to kind of signal to the mind it's time to pay extra attention. It's time to really listen to what's going on here. The three triggers are, number one, your tonality. You want to use a meaningful tone, kind of like I'm doing right now. If I just talk to you in a monotone, for example, okay, now we can talk about something completely random and your mind won't really be paying attention too much because I'm just running through word gobble and salad. Notice what happens there. Because I don't put any emotion into my tone, it doesn't seem important to me, therefore it wouldn't be important to you. Now, compare that to the way that you sound when you talk about something that really is important to you. Let's say that you're with a friend and you want to have an important chat and say, hey, it's time for a chat. Just listen to your own voice when you're saying that, as opposed to, hey, it's time for a chat. There's a big difference in your tonality, and that difference already triggers the mind to pay attention that little bit more, and that little bit might be just the amount you need in order for the mind-bending language to do the rest of the work. In other words, it'll flip that switch inside the brain so that they can't help but turn all their attention to what you're saying. The second thing that you can do is again something you've been hearing on this recording just in the last few minutes. I like to call this the dramatic pause. what happens when someone says something and then pauses. Typically in a conversation, when people pause, it's either a sign that it's your turn to speak, or that this is such an important thing I've just said, I have to give you a moment to really consider it.